First exercise. Move patient's neck into flexion by tipping her chin towards her neck. Rotate as far as possible in a circle. Move patient's neck into extension by positioning her neck erect. Hyperextend patient's neck by tipping her head back as far as she can comfortably tolerate. Move the neck through lateral flexion by tilting her head towards each shoulder as far as possible. Second exercise. Shoulders. Begin with the patient's arm at her side and perform flexion by raising the arm forward and above her head. Move patient's hand behind her body to perform hyperextension. Move patient's shoulder into abduction by raising her arm to the side and over the head with her palm facing out. Lower patient's arm sideways and across the body as far as possible to perform adduction. Return patient's arm at her side to perform extension. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. Third exercise. Arms. Move the patient's arm elbow flexed at the shoulder until her thumb is down and her elbow is lateral to or parallel to her side to perform internal rotation. Move the arm again with the elbow flexed until the thumb is up and the elbow is lateral to the head to perform external rotation. Bend patient's elbow until patient's hand touches her shoulder to perform flexion. Move the patient's arm straightened in a full circle to perform circumduction. Perform extension by straightening her elbow and lowering her hand. Extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Pronation, supination, pronation, supination, pronation, supination. Fourth exercise, fingers. Start with flexion by closing the patient's fingers to make a fist. Gently bend the patient's fingers back as far as the patient can tolerate to accomplish hyperextension. Abduct the fingers by spreading them apart. Adduct them by bringing them together again close together. Repeat abduct and adduct of fingers. Straighten fingers to accomplish extension. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Flexion, dorsiflexion, flexion, dorsiflexion, flexion, dorsiflexion. Radial flexion, ulnar flexion, radial flexion, ulnar flexion, radial flexion, ulnar flexion. Fifth exercise, leg and hip. Move patient's hip through flexion by lifting her leg forward and up. Externally rotate the foot and leg by turning them out. With the patient lying on her prone side or standing, hyperextend her hip by moving her leg back beyond the normal range of extension. Turn patient's leg into perform internal rotation. Turn patient's leg in a full circle to perform circumduction. Return the leg to a straight position to perform extension. Exercise the knee with the patient prone side lying or standing for flexion. Bend the knee by bringing her heel toward the back of her thigh. Perform abduction by moving her leg laterally away from her. Move patient's leg back toward the midline and beyond to perform adduction. Move the hip through extension by returning that leg to its original position. Internal rotation, external rotation, internal rotation, external rotation, internal rotation, external rotation. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. Extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Sixth exercise, ankle. To perform dorsiflexion, move patient's foot so that her toes point up toward her head. To perform feet inversion, turn the sole medially or toward the middle. To perform plantar flexion, move patient's foot so the toes point down away from her head. To perform circumduction, move the foot in a full circle. To perform eversion, turn the sole laterally or outward. Dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, supination, pronation, supination, pronation, supination, pronation. Seventh exercise, toes. Curl the toes down to perform flexion. Straighten the toes to perform extension. Spread the toes apart to perform abduction. Perform range of motion for the thumb. Move patient's thumb across her palm for flexion. Touch the patient's thumb to each finger on the same hand for opposition. Extend patient thumb laterally for abduction. Move the thumb back toward the hand for adduction. Move patient's thumb directly away from her hand for extension. Opposition, opposition, opposition. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. Flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension.